This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
We are talking today with forensic scientist Dan Krane, diving into some of the forensic findings, or I guess lack thereof, in the Alec Murdaugh trial. I have a question I've been burning to ask you specifically. What we heard yesterday in the trial from Alec Murdaugh's brother was Alec Murdaugh's brother involvement in the crime scene very quickly. And I don't have any issue with his brother. I don't really suspect anything bizarre there going on or anything criminal. But what is going on where the Murdaugh family had access to this very active crime scene literally within like 48 hours of this crime taking place? As a forensic scientist and expert in that area, is that not a good idea? That probably not the best idea to have the family intimately involved there?
Well, I think once again, you've asked the question that I think you don't need an expert to tell you the answer to.
But I do. I need you to tell me I'm right.
Well, okay, I'm happy to tell you that you're quite right. Having close family in with access to a crime scene is there's a number of layers of problems with that scenario. One of them is that we've talked about this before, where it's always going to be a challenge. It's actually pretty much impossible to say anything about how or when DNA came to be associated with a crime scene. And at least from the DNA test results, that's not something that you can hope to do. And so if you want to say, or at some point establish that the DNA was associated with a crime, it sure helps an awful lot if you can say, and we took, very reliable steps to make sure that it did not become associated with the crime scene after the crime had been committed, right? There's not much that you can do about preventing someone's DNA from getting to a crime scene before a crime gets committed. That's asking too much from an investigator, but I don't think it's asking too much at all to ask that you don't allow other people's DNA to be added to a crime scene after the crime has been committed. And this is just like one layer of the problem. Another layer of the problem, of course, is that if you don't secure the crime scene, you could get some evidence moved around or moved away. And that's just as much of a problem as adding some more evidence to the crime scene. So, and then, a third area of problem is that close relatives, and again, you don't need a biology professor to tell you this, but close relatives share more DNA in common with each other than they do with unrelated individuals. And so particularly for marginal samples where there may be small amounts of DNA present, that can give rise to some serious complications in the interpretation of test results.
What I found interesting is the brother, it seems like everybody's buddy there, where I called one of my best friends, I'm just summarizing what he said, who happens to be a SLED agent, and I wanted to make sure I could go to the scene because I felt like I needed to clean up, and then he made the call, and the friend's like, yeah, you can go on in there. Isn't this just police work 101 of, no, you can't go there right now? I mean, why are these decisions being made? I obviously it's just speculation, but it's like, what's going on here? This doesn't seem to be rocket science that this was a bad idea.
I agree. It's not rocket science. I've enjoyed listening to a little bit of the testimony that I've been able to watch on TV. Again, I don't think you need any particular expertise to make this observation. It certainly does seem like a very casual relationship between law enforcement and the people who are being investigated, at least at the beginning. And, part of that may be that we're talking about an attorney who worked as a prosecutor, so probably had a very close working and friendly relationship with the people in law enforcement. That's almost certain to be contributing to it to some extent. But I think another part of it is cultural. During the O.J. Simpson trial, the trial of the century, 30 some years ago now, there were a lot of lessons for law enforcement about how to not go about securing a crime scene and how to not collect evidence and how to avoid possibilities of contamination. There were people who could have explained that to the LAPD prior to the Simpson murders and trial. I think there were people who were saying that to LAPD prior, but it took that trial for the lesson to really be struck home. And maybe the folks in South Carolina that have been involved with the Murdaugh investigation just haven't gotten that instruction yet. And maybe this trial will be what helps get that message through to them.
The Pony Express hasn't landed there yet to tell them, hey, guess what? This is how we should handle a crime scene, and here's what we shouldn't. It's ludicrous, but I get it. It's just so insane to me to think that they wouldn't already know these sort of things. Is it a lack of training, though? I mean, is it, they have new people on, you get young people in, and, they have not experienced much of these things. Is it the lack of the training and experience that we're really seeing at play here, and everybody just kind of going about how they do things? Because there's not a lot of this that tends to go on in that small community.
That's my best guess, is that it's just that it hasn't been an issue for them before. They don't have a lot of experience with the need to secure crime scenes like this. I'll tell you, in my personal experience, the less vigorous that the defense bar is in challenging scientific evidence and DNA evidence, perhaps in particular, within a locality, the more likely it is that you will find some rather surprising and egregious problems with the way that scientific evidence is being collected and interpreted. I think the two go hand in hand. If you have a well-trained defense bar, they hold law enforcement and prosecutors to a higher standard, and that results in more reliable, outcomes and a better execution of justice.
Does this end up helping or hurting Alec Murdaugh? The fact that there wasn't a whole lot of forensic evidence that was gathered in this case. We're dealing with a lot of circumstantial evidence. We're dealing with a lot of basically judgment of character and character witnesses in this to try and decide whether this man did what he's accused of doing. I can see where in some cases, they didn't gather a lot, so there's a lot less that could, scientifically point to him. But at the same point, if it is somebody else, they didn't do a lot to have it point away from him either.
Yeah, I think it hinges on is Murdaugh guilty of a double homicide, or is he not? If he is guilty, if he did commit these murders, then the failure to collect more biological material from the crime scene and secure the crime scene, that clearly will work to his advantage. But in contrast, if he's innocent, if he had nothing to do with those murders, then an opportunity may well have been lost to have gathered some evidence that would have helped with bringing the real murderer to justice.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Dan Krane, thank you for your insight into that. I want to get your insight also into how you think he did on the stand from a forensic scientist perspective. So stick around. We'll get to that part of the conversation in just a bit. You stick around too. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of this. Wherever you get those podcasts, follow us, subscribe, even get ad-free episodes if you subscribe to your Apple Podcasts. So check that out. I'm Tony Bruschi. You can follow me on Twitter @TonyBPod. Stay with us.